I thought this would be a unique, interesting approach to kind of visit every ward virtually. I know we can't have the traditional state of the city where we all pack into the city hall auditorium, but I thought this would be a nice opportunity to visit with each ward. All the presentations, all 4 ward presentations are basically pretty similar, but we did tailor a slide or 2 specific to each ward. So what I'll do is I'll start off. Director Leininger will talk about development from his end. And then we did try to incorporate the questions that were set in advance into the presentation. And then we might have a little time at the very end for some Q&A. So with that, I do know there are some elected officials on the call as well. So I want to give them the opportunity to address everyone. So I understand that our councilwoman from Ward 1, Tess Neff, is on.
Thank you, Mayor George. I just want to say it's been my privilege and pleasure to serve the citizens of not only Ward 1, as I'm the Ward 1 representative, but citywide. It's been really gratifying to help you with your problems, your issues, your concerns, your questions. Everything from the city forgot to empty my recycle can to having a concrete pad removed from someone's yard from a former bus stop. And I think I accomplished a lot for our residents, and I was only able to do that because of working collectively with the city administration. Every department has been very responsive and has assisted me to get these things accomplished for our residents. And I thank the city administration for that. It's been a wonderful experience for me the last 14 months. I'm enjoying myself thoroughly and actually having fun at this. And I just wanted to thank you, and thank you, Mayor George, for inviting me.
Thank you, Councilwoman. I also understand that Councilwoman at Large Sarah Keppel is on as well. Sarah, do you want to introduce yourself?
Thank you, Mayor George. Yes, I just want to say hello, and I won't take up too much time because I know you have a lot of great information to share. But thank you for doing this, and thank you everyone for being here. I'm sure Director Leininger will share a lot of great information about where we're headed as a city and some upcoming details. So thanks for having me, and thanks for being here.
Thanks, Councilwoman. Glad you could join us. That's all I see at the moment, but I'll give a minute. Did I miss anybody? All right, with that, let's get started and let's move into the agenda for this evening. The presentation itself should last about an hour. So here's our agenda. You know, I just switched things around a little bit because our #1 priority is always keeping Lakewood safe, but due to some recent events, I thought it would best to address safety within Lakewood. So after a few slides on safety in Lakewood, I'll talk about our COVID-19 response, our water sewer infrastructure upgrades, and then I'll turn it over to Director Leininger to talk about updates and development and city projects for 2021. Next slide, please. It's nearly, every day that we're seeing on the news some sort of gun-related violence across our region and nationally. These gun-related incidents have become far too common and have now come into our community of Lakewood. After a year-long pandemic that has resulted in a loss of income and livelihood, paired with easy access to guns, my fear is that we'll see similar instances perhaps over the next few months, but we must have an appropriate and effective response to these incidents, which I'm going to discuss that part on the next slide. But before I go into those next steps, I want to provide an update on some of the most recent incidents. In most cases, as you can see from the screen, the suspect has been apprehended by Lakewood Police Department. I want to thank the police department for their hard work and careful steps to apprehend these criminals. I also want to take a few minutes to speak directly about the incident at Madison Park that occurred in mid-April. So at 6:45 p.m. on Tuesday, April 13th, Lakewood Police Department were called to the park after a report of gunshots being fired. Police arrived at the scene and discovered an 18-year-old male with 2 apparent gunshot wounds. The victim was quickly taken to Metro Health and is recovering. At this time, we have 2 people charged and in custody. This incident has absolutely rattled our community, and for good reason. Our parks are our local treasures, and we want everyone to feel safe to use them any time of day or night. Since the earlier incident at Madison Park, I've been working hand in hand with our police department and community partners to come up with solutions to keep all of our parks safer, which I will go into a little more detail in the next slide. I understand that increased police presence doesn't make everyone feel safer, though. Recently, I sent a communication to our anti-racism task force to make recommendations for equity and inclusion for everyone, and especially our BIPOC community. I do also want to take this opportunity and talk a moment about communication on these incidents. Lately, there seems to be a rush on social media to be the first to post about a gun-related incident. And I just want to remind everyone that first is not always best. The police department and myself have the duty and obligation to ensure that anything we communicate is thoroughly reviewed and is accurate. These are serious matters. We need serious, accurate, and thoughtful communications. I spent much of that Tuesday evening at Madison Park in the police station. We're reviewing camera footage and staying on top of the investigation. Now, as soon as we have enough information, our police department will issue a press release to the media. Following that press release, I will work with our law and police department on issuing a statement from my office. At my office, we have the responsibility to ensure that statement is reviewed by both entities to be sure that we are saying anything that would impede the investigation or later prosecution. As the chief executive, the statements made by my office need to be held to that higher standard, and I have to be certain that we release proper, thorough information. The police department and my office provide information as soon as possible, but I want everyone to understand that releasing certain information too soon could seriously impede our investigations. So I just want to remind everyone, if you're looking for accurate information, social media is really probably not the first place to go. Recently, we've updated our police page of our website so that high profile crimes, those press releases, are on the police page of our website. And also you can contact my office or the police department directly at any time. Again, our goal is to communicate factual information as soon as we possibly can. Just please understand that sometimes it takes a little bit longer on both of our ends because many times we're still in the middle of that investigation. Next slide, please. So on this slide, I've included some short and long-term solutions to these recent gun-related incidents. The short-term solutions are just that. None of us want to live in a state where we have a police officer at our parks every day just to make us feel safe. This is really going to have to take our entire community really working together to keep our community safe. But here's some details on what we're doing on the short term, which is increased patrols at all of our parks, not just Madison Park, increased police patrols at all of our parks. Officers have been told to get out of their police cruisers to be walking in the parks whenever they can. So we're trying to increase our foot patrols as much as we can. We also have a dedicated Madison Park detail that we are using some overtime to staff that Madison Park detail. And during some peak hours that we've identified, an officer will be at a Madison Park. Now, that doesn't mean an officer is going to be at Madison Park 24/7. They are going to be there during some peak hours. We're also adding higher tech police cameras. We do have cameras throughout the city, one of which is at Madison Park, which was quite helpful in the investigation. I myself reviewed some of the footage from that camera, but these are more higher tech police cameras that many other cities have. I know Mentor has it. Last I heard, Independence was looking at these police cameras as well. So we're adding those. Also continue to add to our park staff security guards. One of our security guards is actually on the scene when the most recent incident happened at Madison Park, was able to attend to that individual and most certainly help save him along with our EMS. And I'm constantly working with our police department, working regularly with Chief Kowchak, Captain Albrecht, my chief of staff, John Story. We're constantly looking at ways that we can address these issues that have come into our city. And like I said at the beginning, they're really across the region and across the nation. Just today, I had a phone call with Everytown USA, and talking about how we as a local municipality can address gun violence. I told them a few of the things that we're doing, and then they were very impressed by what we are doing here in Lakewood. And I have to give kudos to both council and our community. We're a very engaged community. And I know if anyone can address gun violence, the city of Lakewood certainly can. We're also working on trauma response. The trauma of this incident has impacted our entire community. I saw the picture and it sticks in my mind of those poor children that were up at the park when that incident happens, and they were, taking cover behind a building, and that's ingrained in me. And so I want to make sure that those children are dealing with that traumatic event and their families as well. Now, the schools have provided a letter to all parents informing them of school resources to deal with trauma. We here at City Hall, we've partnered with Frontline Services to provide additional support and trauma services to our community members. So if you or someone you know, a neighbor, a family member was at Madison Park or was just impacted by crime in general and dealing with trauma, please contact our Human Services Department so we can connect you with Frontline Services. Now, those are some of the short terms. Now, the long terms are the more complicated, and it's really going to take all of us pulling together to address gun violence in our community. Access to guns and gun violence at the end of the day is a national issue that Lakewood alone cannot solve. We could put every safety measure we can think of in place, and we couldn't guarantee another incident will not happen. That's why we need to be thinking long-term about solutions to keep our community engaged on this manner. I'm in very early discussions with Metro Health to begin a community stewardship program. This training program will bring together leaders, public service, and community members to begin to understand and respond to trauma. Now, trauma is defined as a human experience that disrupts, threatens, or harms the safety, security, and stability of an individual, group, collective, and or culture that is beyond capacity to master at the time. As such, this goal would be to deploy this training program to a wide spectrum of our community to assist in responding to trauma. Now, more to come on this program is forthcoming. Again, it's in the very early stages. Slavic Village also had rolled out a similar community stewardship program. So we're in communication with them to see what was successful and wasn't, so that we can roll out a successful program here in Lakewood. We're also working with the Lakewood Outdoor Basketball Committee on adding mentor programs to the basketball courts. We do have a relationship with them already, but we want to bring more mentors to the basketball courts to ensure that when they do open up soon, that we have some more adults there mentoring our youth at the courts. And finally, working with the Anti-Racism Task Force. We need to create a better place for all residents. And that includes our BIPOC community who are disproportionately impacted by gun-related violence. So I look forward to the work that the Anti-Racism Task Force does and developing solutions and initiatives to address some of these goals. At the end of the day, I want to be sure that everyone feels safe and welcome in Lakewood. Next slide, please. So on the topic of safety, I just wanted to include a slide here about Lakewood Police Department's Crisis Intervention Team, or CIT. These are officers that are specialized in training in crisis situations and into de-escalating certain scenarios. The officers pictured here received the Medal of Honor for their work in de-escalating a situation that saved the life of a man who threatened to leap from a building. So this is just one of the trainings that the Lakewood Police Department offers among many other trainings. So I just wanted to call attention to this program that we have within the police department. Next slide, please. So continuing on to the presentation, 2020, where we've been. My first year in office has certainly been the most challenging for each and every one of us, both personally and professionally. All of us have been impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. The next couple of slides discuss the city's responses to COVID-19. So early on, I created an internal task force that was made up of a representative from every department to address COVID-19. This task force was starting to meet regularly as of March of 2020. So take your mind back to when the pandemic hit in March 2020. There was so much unknown. We had no idea how it was spreading at the time. And so being a brand new mayor, being within my third month of being here, it was important to get every department together to discuss how are we going to continue to provide services to the city of Lakewood, but also keep our employees safe. We had that period of time where basically everything was shut down, but municipal government and some other businesses were not shut down. We had to make sure that the refuse was still being picked up. We had to make sure that police officers were still there, that EMS were still responding. But how were we going to do that? So I really credit that task force of every single department had a voice of what we could and we couldn't do in terms of providing service to our employees. We also work to limit exposure to our residents and get information to our residents out as best as possible. Now, if you think back to the beginning, think back of March 2020, everyone was looking at where do I go for factual information? So we created 2 web pages devoted to providing up-to-date information about COVID-19. So we have the coronavirus page of our website, and then the coronavirus business resources page, so that when we are gathering information from either the CDC, the state, Cuyahoga County, we would put it all in one place for Lakewood residents so they could say, okay, this is a place I know, it's a government entity, it has factual information. We also posted regularly on our social media channels, trying to update people via social media. And we also early on created a phone line for residents. Early on, and still this virus impacts our seniors more heavily than other populations. And as we're in that era of looking at where do we go for information, most seniors don't follow us on social media, or perhaps don't have a computer at home. So we were established this phone line so that everybody in our community was able to get important information about COVID. I remember one Sunday afternoon, myself and Chief Dunphy were going around delivering letters to some of our senior centers to inform the seniors of what we were doing and resources that were available to our seniors. Because again, we wanted to make sure we were communicating as best we could with everybody in our community. We also developed an internal COVID-19 playbook. It was more for employees to understand what we at the city were doing to keep employees safe from COVID. We were able to use some CARES Act funding to help our community as well. And I'm very proud to say that we did not lay off any full-time workers during the pandemic, which was kudos to all of us really working together to make sure that we were still delivering services and that we didn't have to lay off any of our full-time employees. Next slide, please. So how are we able to do that? How are we able to not lay off any of our full-time employees? Fiscal austerity measures were put into place very early. Early projections were that our city's revenues were going to be down about $5 million. So we had to take action immediately to reduce our expenditure. So what we did is we had a freeze in hiring, a freeze in travel, training, new contract services, overtime. We curbed our capital spending. We had to put on pause major projects that were upcoming. For instance, the Cove Church project, which is such an important project to our community, where we bring all of our human services divisions under one roof. That project really hadn't started yet. Although we own the property, we hadn't started the remodel yet. So I made the difficult decision to say, hey, we got to pause, because we're facing some serious revenue losses, and it's not in the best long-term interest of us to start a brand new, very costly multi-million-dollar project. Now, good news is we were able to come out of that, and that project was able to resume in the late summer, early fall, and it's slated to be open to the community early 2022. But again, early on, it was the best decision to pause it at that time. We also instituted some major savings program. We had a massive overtime reduction where we saved over $500,000 compared to 2019 in overtime expenses. And we also had a voluntary furlough program where we asked full-time employees to furlough so that we could overall reduce our expenditures, and we saved another $500,000. So combined, we saved over $1 million with these cost-saving programs. Also, the very bottom of this slide talks about we're one of the first communities. I know we were one of the very first communities in Ohio to establish a small business rent relief program. Early on, I recognized that if we're going to be shutting down the economy, our small businesses that are the lifeblood of Lakewood, they were not going to probably be able to pay the next month's rent since they didn't have any customers. So we used some funds to launch a small business rent relief program at the end of March. Since then, we're able to fine tune that program, offer a few rounds of that. And in the end, we were able to help 203 small businesses help pay their rent or payroll to keep them afloat during the pandemic. We also later instituted, through CARES Act funding, a residential rent relief program, and we're able to help 614 households. So those two major programs really help both our residents in need, but also our small businesses, who are, again, are our lifeblood of the Lakewood community. So I'm really proud of that program. And Director Leininger is going to talk a little bit more about that program on his portion of the presentation. Next slide. Okay, so 2021, where we're going. COVID-19 is obviously still a major focus. So we're still dealing with different aspects of the pandemic now. As we all know, the economy is moving along again. People are getting back to work, but it's still a major focus. We at City Hall are still wearing our masks every day and really focus on pushing out, the vaccine information, and hope that everyone gets their vaccines too. I got my second shot in early April, so I'm very happy to be fully vaccinated, and I hope that you'll do the same. Another one of my focuses that kind of had to be paused, like just about everything else to deal with COVID, was trying to enhance our communications. So we really tried to bump up our social media and our website presence. We do have a new website, a new city website that'll be coming at the end of May, which will be lakewoodoh.gov. This is a secure government website, so that when someone is looking up the Lakewood, Ohio, through some sort of search engine, they can know that this is the actual government site. We also, which I'm really excited about, started a new e-newsletter. So monthly, if you sign up, and there's the link right now that you can sign up for, monthly, you'll receive a communication about what's happening within the city. So really excited to have that e-newsletter established. We continue, and the next couple slides are going to go into a lot of detail on this, on water sewer infrastructure upgrades. This is something in Lakewood that we've been talking about for many, many years. And we still need to continue to invest in our water sewer infrastructure. And then we still are going to invest in our parks. Kauffman Park is getting a big makeover this year. We're continuing to invest in our tree canopy, and we're continuing to invest in development and projects throughout the city that Director Leininger will go into a bit during his presentation. Next slide, please. Okay, so water sewer updates. I wanted to provide everybody an update on the implementation of our integrated wet weather improvement plan, or IWIP for short. Part of this plan includes a review of our water and sewer rate structure. This is a large, complex plan that has been in the works for years, and our IWIP has already been approved by City Council. It was approved actually back when I was on City Council, but our next step is to look at equitable ways to pay for these required water and sewer updates. Lakewood's water sewer system is unique, and that is actually quite a benefit to Lakewood. This means that both the US and Ohio regulators understand that Lakewood is unique. The fact is, Lakewood, we were not built as a system. Sewers were largely built at the turn of the last century as independent projects to move household sewage away from homes as efficiently as possible, and it was discharged directly into the lake or river. The system was then later connected decades later. Some of our sewers were built with a single pipe combined sewer, but most of Lakewood was built with two pipes, a storm and a sanitary, and you can see that from the graphic above. Regulators have recognized the uniqueness of Lakewood, and it's important because they are working with us to find the best projects to address our unique system. Next slide, please. Lakewood has continuously invested in our water sewer system, and this has been an important feature, again, when we deal with the regulators. We have raised our capture and ability to treat sewage from 79 to 85%. That's important. There are many communities that are spending millions of dollars just to get there, but Lakewood, we're there. But since we're on the Lake Erie and Rocky River watersheds, we have higher levels of control that we need to meet. The high rate treatment project down by the plant will raise our percentage of capture to 88%. And our 5-year IWIP blocks plan to invest $50 million on the next 2 cycles. We will then be able to move to 95% of the pollutants that come from our system, capture and treated. This is a huge investment, but we have to put the best bang for our buck projects and investments up front. Additionally, we keep up with regular water sewer improvements to continue to meet the IWIP. Both Andrews and Gladys are slated to have water main replacements in 2022. We continue to speak regularly with the Ohio and US EPA regulators, and they continue to agree that our IWIP plan is the best path forward for Lakewood. We had hoped to hear on whether or not we would receive a consent decree by the end of last year, but due to COVID, the response was delayed from them, and we're believing we should hear something by the end of the year and whether or not they will issue that consent decree. City Council has approved the IWIP, as I mentioned, and have approved rate increases through 2023. The regulators see that as a strong sign of our commitment to implement the IWIP. The question is 2023 and after, how do we afford these required capital sewer projects? We need to determine what is equitable, and how we meet these needs. Our current rate system is based on water usage. Increases fund the high rate treatment plant and improvements to date, but we need additional increases to fund the next phase of the IWIP. And the structure of those increases will be very important. We have a very old system and a plant that needs continuous investment as well, which require more funding in the years ahead. We're going to try to use the benefit of time to get things started so that predictable and small rate increases are equitable over time. Next slide, please. Now, communities that get into trouble are communities that, raise and spike increases of their rates that really hurts those trying to budget. Again, our rates are based on water usage, but over the past 20 years, our water usage continues to decline due to smaller household sizes and smart water utilities. With the continued decrease in usage, it's become unstable. Costs on the sewer side are wet weather driven. The way the rates are set now is that those with large parking lots that don't use a lot of water impact the equity because they don't use a lot of water, but they put a lot of drain on the sewer system due to the rain runoff. Right now, we are looking at an impervious or perhaps a fixed fee to balance these rates so that the community is not dependent on these risky trends. Many communities in our region use as a fixed charge or impervious area charges. That includes Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District, Columbus, and Elyria, to name a few. These are very commonplace in most districts. Next slide, please. These discussions and the implementation of the IWIP have been ongoing for years. In 2019, the city had public meetings and asked for public input. The impervious charge was what the majority of the public agreed was most equitable. We are currently reviewing the change of our rate structure to account for impervious areas. We're making good progress on the implementation of our IWIP, and I'm looking forward to more discussions with our community about that. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Director Leininger. Director Leininger was appointed as Planning and Development Director in July of 2020. Sean has over 20 years of municipal planning, zoning, community, and economic development experience. His previous experience includes Assistant Town Manager in Bluffton, South Carolina, Director of Public Service and Development for our neighbor to the west, Fairview Park. And we were able to acquire him from his previous position as Executive Director of the Cuyahoga County Planning Commission. He's the current Vice Chairman of the Northeast Ohio First Suburbs Development Council and has a master's in city and regional planning from Ohio State University. So we're very fortunate to have someone of Sean's caliber, experience, expertise working for the city of Lakewood. And with that, I will turn it over to Director Leininger to talk about what's going on in terms of development and planning within the city.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for the introduction and the kind words. And again, thank you for allowing me to be part of your State of the City address. It is very much appreciated. And so I'm going to take a similar path that the mayor has taken and talk about what we've been working on the past year before focusing on what's on our drawing boards for the coming or the remainder of 21 and into part of 22. To begin, and it's kind of appropriate to begin here, the mayor touched upon this, but we spent so much of the past year talking about COVID-19 and putting in place support programs. I really want to spend a minute and just build upon, add some additional color to what the mayor had shared with the city established programs that were in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. So shortly after the issuance of the stay-at-home order that would ultimately shut down most businesses for 2 months, the city launched several programs, including a small business rent assistance program, and then soon after that, a residential rent assistance program. The small business assistance program provides up to $7,000 for rent or job retention assistance to qualifying businesses that have up to 50 employees. And so in Lakewood, we're small business driven, and so most businesses in the city of Lakewood actually would qualify for this funding. Alternatively, the residential rent assistance program provides rent assistance to income qualified residents that have been financially impacted by the pandemic and have or are falling behind in their rent payments. So separate from those financial programs, we also included some non-financial assistance programs, really to help support businesses and their customers, including creating an express parking program that maintains 15-minute high turnover parking spaces along our streets, and those are available 24/7. And really that helps to support social distance, drop-off pickup, both for shopping and for dining with Uber Eats, Grubhub, and even just going out and picking up your own meal through a takeout. And finally, we also created more opportunities for outdoor dining. We flexed our dimensional requirements, we flexed our locational standards, and eliminated time of year restrictions on when outdoor dining could occur. And we've, as a result of some additional applications that have come in, there are now an additional 24 temporary outdoor dining locations that have taken advantage of these flex standards to create some socially distanced outdoor dining. Before I move on from this topic, though, I want to share some results from our efforts in providing this COVID-19 assistance over the past year. The mayor had mentioned we've approved over 614 residential rent assistance applications. That's actually helped over 1,100 residents in our community. We've also approved 203 applications that have assisted Lakewood businesses. And to date, we've awarded over $1.1 million in the residential assistance and over $750,000 in small business assistance. In total, we have over $1.3 million available to help support residential grants and just over $900,000 to support small businesses. So what that means is there's still money available. If you are a business or you're a renter in the city that qualifies, or you know someone that does, please reach out to our partners at Lakewood Alive for business assistance and to Lakewood Community Services Center for residential rent assistance, and take advantage of this resource while the city's able to make it available. So now moving on into the development activity that's been going on in Lakewood over the past year. One great indicator that we look at that helps provide some strength of investment that's happening in the community is our building permit activity. And so in 2020, both permit activity and construction valuation remained strong. In fact, we had the 4th highest permit volume year and the 5th highest construction value year out of the last 10 years. Now, moving forward, COVID-19 is absolutely impacting the labor supply. It's impacting material availability. And if you've been to Home Depot or Lowe's or went and bought lumber recently or any other construction product for that matter, it's impacting material prices. Lumber right now is 3 times higher than what it was pre-pandemic level. So this is causing delays in projects. However, it's important to note that those projects are still moving forward, especially those large scale projects that communities talked a lot about over the last few years, including the downtown site, the SOLA projects, et cetera. They're still moving. They're a little bit slower than what they were, but over the next couple of years, we will see an additional $150 million in permit activity just from those major projects that are still out there taking place. Another indicator of investment, especially in a bedroom community like Lakewood, is home sales. So this slide indicates what's been happening in our residential, our single family market over the last 5 years. Median sales price has increased 56% from $154,000 in 2016 to $240,000 in 2020. If we look back a little bit further, it's not on this slide, but if we look back a little bit further to 2011, as we were coming out of the housing bust, the Great Recession, when the median sales price was $112,200, the increase to 2020 is 114%. Not only are the homes selling for more of them are selling and they are staying on the market, and they are not staying on the market for long. So last year we had 586 single family home sales, which was a 10-year high. And the median days that those homes were on the market was 30 days, which is a 10-year low. Not noted on this slide, of those 586 home sales, 55% of those were at or above list price. So clearly Lakewood has has had and continues to have a very strong housing market, even through the pandemic. Of course, while this is great news for homeowners that are looking to sell their homes, it does put tremendous amount of pressure on affordability in Lakewood. The city does have an award-winning affordable housing strategy that helps guide our investment into affordable housing initiatives. Primarily, we invest our federal community development block grant, or CDBG funds, and our home funds into the construction and rehab of owner-occupied and rental housing that supports income qualified households. So in 2020, the city provided over $545,000 to support 44 properties, and that included the rehab and sale of a home on Orchard Grove. In addition to rehab, repair, accessibility, and maintenance programs that we manage, This year, we are building 2 new single-family homes that will be sold to income-qualified households. And so on this slide, you see the renderings that city staff put together to help illustrate what these homes will look like. One is located on Shaw and the other is located on Plover. So besides investing in our federal funds into affordable housing, we also do make available a property tax abatement incentive to developers that provide affordable housing. And I'll talk about a couple of those projects in a couple slides from now that are taking advantage of that tax abatement in exchange for providing affordable housing opportunities. So let's shift gears. Let's update everybody on a few of the major development projects that are going on in the city. And we'll start with the downtown redevelopment site. So clearly a lot has changed in the past year or two. Just a couple of years ago, we had the hospital still sitting here. It's clearly since been demolished, and this is what we are looking at today. Also, as you're likely aware, last year the city separated from the previous developer that was, and at that time we were planning to pivot over towards Casto and North Point Realty. If you recall, they were the other developer that was selected through the 2017 RFP process. Well, this past December, City Council approved that pivot over to the Casto team. And since that time, and recognizing there's been a lot of changes on the site, we've been working with Casto and North Point to provide them an update on those current conditions. And in turn, they are modifying their plans accordingly. At the same time, while they're doing that, we are negotiating the term sheet that will provide the basis for a more detailed development agreement that will be finalized as we get deeper into the design and approval process. And we've also re-engaged with the advisory panel that was originally created to evaluate the RFP submittals. And they're going to help us reevaluate the Casto proposal as they make their updates. So it's really as this updated proposal starts to take shape, we'll be advancing into a very public review and zoning process in the coming months. So there's a lot of activity that's happening right now to kind of ramp up towards that. And once we have that revised proposal in hand, we'll be out in front of the community to talk about it and get your input into Casto's updated proposal. So Solov Development also has 2 projects that sit equidistant really from the downtown redevelopment site. The first is the former Barry Buick properties that are located on Detroit between Cranford and Rosewood. These are known as, this project's known as the View West. It's a mixed use project. It's 160 units that are spread across 4 stories with a first floor commercial space. As I shared previously, the city has made available a tax incentive that will provide affordable housing. This project, along with the sister project I'll talk about here in a second, the View East, will be the first projects that are going to utilize this incentive. And so what that means in this case, for this building, 20% of the buildings will be, or 32 units, there's 160 units, will be made affordable for a period of 15 years. So right now, the status of this project, Solov is currently working to complete their property acquisitions and construction drawings. They're through all the planning commission ABR approvals. They really just need to wrap up construction drawings for building permit in addition to the property acquisition. And based on recent conversations with Solov, we still expect this project to be under construction this fall. So this is just a rendering that's looking down and kind of south across Detroit. The buildings looking on are flanking, north and south sides of Detroit Avenue. So then the second of the Solov development projects is the former Spitzer Chrysler site that's near Detroit and Bunts. So this is called the View East. It's a smaller sibling to the View West. It's also mixed use, but instead of 160 units, there's 120 units spread across, again, 4 stories with also a first floor commercial space. This project will include affordable housing units. Again, same methodology, 20% of the units, so 20% of 120 is 24 units to be made available as affordable housing units for a period of 15 years. Solov is currently working with the Architectural Board of Review on this project. And as such, this project is probably running about 6 months behind the View West as they go through and complete their public planning and approval process and moving into acquisitions and building permits. So this is one of the preliminary renderings that's pending right now with the Architectural Board of Review. This particular elevation will be reviewed at their upcoming meeting in May. There may be some additional modifications to this elevation. This is looking at one of the 2 buildings. They're very similar style buildings. But this gives you a great overview of the project and the design intent that's happening. And this is looking, we're looking east down Detroit and kind of to the southern edge of Detroit Avenue, between Wyandotte and Parkwood is where this building is located. So, and finally, for the major project updates, or development updates that I want to give you this evening, Daniel Budish and Betsy Figge are leading the development team that will convert the former Mac Products manufacturing space located on Hurd Avenue, right behind the Fantasy Nightclub. They're going to convert that space into an LGBTQ entertainment and restaurant venue. It's a 20,000 square foot adaptive reuse project. It's going to be occupied with a Latinx restaurant, a pizza kitchen. It'll have a new rec facility with a mezzanine track with the idea to support fitness, volleyball, dodgeball, and the Stonewall sports community. The Fieldhouse will be the first phase of a multi-phase project that will also include the historic rehab of the former Fantasy Nightclub, which is also going to provide a range of opportunities and support for the LGBTQ community. When it's complete, the Studio West complex, as the two buildings have been kind of branded as, they'll serve not only as an anchor for the gay community, but also for the Eastern Detroit Avenue gateway into the community. With the Fieldhouse, which is the elevations that you see on the screen right now, building permit drawings have been submitted. Look for this project to kick off mid to late 2021. The Fantasy rehabilitation is still working through their planning and design process. And really, we don't expect to see construction on that building until 2022. So looking into 21, we have a number of other exciting projects that we're looking forward to. The Marlowe Avenue townhomes have started over on Madison and Marlowe. The Lake Avenue homes, they've completed the site remediation, the utility connections are in. The Beck Center, which is a Ward 1 location, they'll be improving. They have a small open space in the front of their building. They received through the city $50,000 in grants from Cuyahoga County to improve that space. And what's really exciting is that we have a host of historic preservation and adaptive reuse projects. From Ward 1, we have St. James School and Rectory. We have the Trinity Lutheran Church, the By-Right Building in St. Cyril and Methodius that are in the Birdtown neighborhood. And then, of course, the former Board of Education buildings that were acquired by Liberty Development are currently sitting down with the state of Ohio for historic tax credits. So there's a lot of exciting projects that are on the horizon for the next year and a half. So let's change gears one more time and let's focus on some city projects that are on our schedule for this year. The first one up here is Kauffman Park. This project actually went to bid this week with work beginning this summer, probably June, maybe into July. Project's going to provide a major update to the park, including an ADA accessibility improvements from the Detroit entrance. We're going to provide a circuit walking path around the park and add a picnic shelter. And we're also going to upgrade the play equipment. That's going to have kind of a nature-based theme. As part of that, there will also be a water play feature that'll be introduced to the park. In addition to that, not shown on this slide is we're going to be introducing some public art into the park by repurposing the blades of grass that are currently at the Detroit-Sloane intersection. I mentioned that the Beck Center received $50,000 from Cuyahoga County. This project has also received $50,000 from Cuyahoga County, so we appreciate the county support as we look to make improvements to Kauffman Park. So as the mayor mentioned, the city in 2019, the city had acquired the former Cove Church for the purposes of for the purpose of consolidating the Human Services Department and their support for children through seniors into a single intergenerational location. So these plans are generally complete at this point and being bid for the adaptive reuse of the former church. And we'll see construction begin this summer with the Human Services Department coming together in early 2022. The renderings that are on here kind of show you the design intent. If you're familiar with the inside of the church, of retaining a lot of the historic fabric of the church with the sanctuary space, repurposing the remainder of the first floor and the basement for Human Services office as well as their family room. This site will also provide important stormwater storage to assist the city in dealing with combined sewer overflows into Lake Erie. That component of the project is still very much part of it. However, it's planned for a few years out. and will take place as separate and apart and independent from what's happening here with the redevelopment of an adaptive reuse of the church building. Built in the 1950s, last updated in the 1980s, Foster Pool will be getting at Lakewood Park will be getting a renovation in the near future. We are currently out looking for design firms to help lead us through a public input and design process. That will kick off this summer. Our hopes are to move right from design into construction, but we also understand that design and that scope has to be kind of vetted through that public input and designing process. So as we work through that, we'll have a better handle on when construction can take place and be able to budget it as part of the city's capital improvement programs. The city has been very fortunate to receive $35,000 from NOPEC and another $15,000 from the Ohio Environmental Protection Agency to support the expansion of electric vehicle charging stations throughout the city. So this year we'll be adding 4 new locations with dual port level 2 chargers. They'll be added at Madison Park, City Hall, Lakewood Park, and then also on the Detroit extension near Rio Street. So on the Detroit extension, there's a bank of angled parking spaces. We're going to utilize 2 of those spaces for a charging station. And this is in addition to the 3 existing stations that are located downtown at Raising Cane's and also at the Winterhurst, which is actually a fast charging station. And so before we pivot off of this and focus on some specific Ward 1 projects, city projects that we have scheduled for this year, I just want to share that, and you know, I'm sure you've seen these murals, but the city does maintain a spectacular vernacular public art program that creates private partnerships in support of public art. And so these are a few of the examples that are on the screen. There's been a few of them sprinkled throughout the presentation this evening. If you want to learn more about these, we do have an interactive map that's available on our website. If you go to right now, onelakewood.com/public art, or just go to the website and in the search bar, type in public art. It'll take you to the public art page. You'll see a link for a map. And especially as the weather's warming up, you want to get out, walk around. There's actually some great selfie spots around the community with these public art interventions. Go out, enjoy them, and appreciate the artwork that's been provided throughout the city. So I want to highlight, as we wrap up here, a few projects that are taking place in Ward 1. So this is Detroit-Sloane Improvements. Construction will begin on this here later this month, or actually in May. It's still April today. So beginning in May, well, construction is going to begin on some pedestrian safety, utility, and streetscape improvements on Detroit Avenue between Sloane and Graber. So this project is going to make permanent some of the painted curb lines that you see, and actually reduce a lane on Detroit to support pedestrian safety, but also to support the continuation of the Metro Parks all-purpose trail that currently runs along Valley Parkway in the Rocky Rivers Reservation. We're going to pop that out of the park and bring it along the south side. I don't know if you can see my cursor. We're going to bring it along the south side of Detroit up to Graber. Additionally, as part of this, we'll create opportunities for stormwater improvements. We're going to create opportunities for a softer, greener gateway into our community, particularly at the Sloane intersection and at the bend in Graber as you pass by Harry Buffalo. So these are some renderings of what that means and what that looks like. This is looking at the northeast corner of Detroit and Sloane, as well as at the bend in front of Harry Buffalo. And so the idea is to create landscape opportunities along with interjecting some high quality materials and some public art interventions. You'll note there's a couple of slides on some of these. They show a public art placeholder. That's not what it's going to look like. There's a separate RFP proposal process that's out for that to help define what those will look like. But although this is a city project, we are grateful for the support of the Metro Parks and their effort and their commitment to maintain that Parkway Trail that I mentioned that's coming out of Rocky River Reservation. Their commitment to maintain that as it meanders through the Detroit corridor out to Graber. The mayor touched upon the high rate treatment facility. This is nearly complete. This facility will help process high volume water flows to the sewer plant that occur during certain rain events, and ultimately help eliminate the need to overflow sewers into the Rocky River. Commissioning and testing is ongoing through this year, and we expect the HRT to be in full operation in 2022. Along with the HRT facility, we do have a digester project that's nearly complete. What a digester is it breaks down organic waste that is captured and processed at the plant to make it available for us to properly dispose of. That digester project will be complete this summer and fully operational this summer. There are some major improvements that are currently being designed for Hilliard Road. The city is designing a resurfacing project that will begin at the bridge over to Rocky River and extend east to Warren Road. In addition to the resurfacing, we will be adding bike lanes to the roadway, very similar to those added on Lake Avenue. Design will be complete this year with construction to occur in 22. At the same time, Cuyahoga County is also planning to replace the Hilliard Road Bridge that is over Rocky River. They are currently working on their design plans. Those plans will be complete the process will continue through this year, and the plans will not actually be complete until 22. Within construction on the bridge will begin in 2023, and that will be a multi-year project, which will result in detours as the bridge will be completely removed and replaced. And there'll be a lot of information, public information, as those designs are finalized and we get closer to construction. So the last couple of slides here, improvements are being made to Fire Station 2 that include the addition of an apparatus bay, creating dedicated equipment storage, as well as providing upgraded laundry facilities that really are going to improve the care and storage of the contaminated gear and clothing that the firefighters wear and use. Construction is currently underway and is scheduled to be complete later this year. So finally, this is looking into 2021. There's a number of other projects that are scheduled both by the city, but then also by some of our utility providers. So Lauderdale Avenue is scheduled to have a water line replacement with some sewer improvements, as well as a street resurfacing at the conclusion of those underground improvements. Dominion East also has a couple of gas line replacement projects scheduled on Edgewater Drive between Kenneth Lane and Webb Road. Also on Lake Avenue, West Forest Road and Clifton Road, all south of Clifton Boulevard. Unfortunately, I don't know the schedules on those projects at this point, but any residents that are in those affected areas will receive notice from Dominion East Ohio. And certainly last but not least, Mayor George talked about the integrated wet weather improvement plan and how important that is to the city. We're always continuing to advance projects and make improvements to our system. For Ward 1, that also does include those two projects I mentioned previously. That also does include taking some data collection and sampling so that we can provide some above ground storage to capture stormwater and hold it in those high rain events so we can properly treat it before releasing it into the Rocky River. So it's been a busy year. We have an even busier year on the horizon. I'm going to close with our contact information. If you have any questions, you can certainly email them to us. This will get you to us, and I'll hand it back over. I think I'm handing it back over to you, Mayor. We'll close out if there's any questions that have been submitted as part of the chat. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Director Langer. Thank you so much for joining me on our unique virtual State of the City ward tour. We did give a handful of questions in advance of the presentation that we did our best to try to incorporate in the presentation. If you did have any questions that went unanswered, please reach out to myself or Director Leininger. Our contact information is on the screen. We'd be happy to answer any questions. And again, thank you all for joining us on this unique State of the City address. Again, thank you to Councilwoman Neff, Councilwoman Keppel for joining us as well. And thank you for joining us and hearing the updates going on in our community. Feel free to join the other wards presentations. They'll be quite similar, but thank you again, and everybody have a good evening. Good night.